Ukraine is strengthening its naval defense, while the Netherlands is training a Ukrainian crew on a mine countermeasure ship. Combo strike, Ukrainian armed forces drones destroyed enemy rear positions. Additionally, defense forces struck the base of the enemy's secret unit Rubicon near Mariupol. Trump has gone too far. A resolution for impeachment has been introduced in the US Congress.
13 articles of charges at once. The author claims that the president is subject to impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors. From illegal war and abuse of power to usurping budgetary authority, pressuring the justice system, and using power for personal gain.
Drone blockade, defense forces have encircled the enemy's logistics near Donetsk. The fire, visible for dozens of kilometers, continues to burn at the oil refinery in Tuapse. Nothing to say, Putin once again is refining his message. They finally reached an agreement. Trump once again announced a peace deal with Iran.
Iran wants to make a deal. Today, they are ready to agree to things they were unwilling to accept 2 months ago. Right now, very successful negotiations are underway.
Putin is looking for a new war. The dictator is ready to attack Europe as early as this spring.
We are ready right now. There can be no doubt about that. It's possible that a situation will arise quickly where we have no one left to negotiate with.
About this and more, right now. Hello, I am Volodymyr Rabchun, and this is Ukraine Today. Please subscribe, leave a like, and let's move on to the news. The Security Service of Ukraine, together with the Defense Forces, attacked drones at the Tuapse port. Deep water oil loading stands, pipeline infrastructure, and a multifunctional radar station were hit. The footage shows a large-scale fire that broke out as a result of precise Ukrainian strikes. Almost daily strikes on Russian infrastructure serving the Kremlin's war. This is now the reality of today's Russia. It seems everything really is going according to plan.
What's going on there? Tekla knocked them all out.
Once again, the Black Sea coast of Russia hosted Ukrainian Lyuty drones. Residents of the town of Tuapse recorded dozens of explosions over the city and were the first to admit that the local oil refinery was on fire. The moment of impact and the subsequent fire were visible even from space. So in the morning, vacationers were greeted with spectacular views.
I didn't go outside for this. They hit the plant. Everything is burning there.
And although the local governor preferred to remain silent about the attack on the plant, OSINT analysts identified the sources of the fire in Tuapse.
OSINT analyst Astra, using a video filmed by an eyewitness, identified at least 3 fire sources in Tuapse. 2 of them are located on the territory of the Tuapse oil refinery, and 1 is in the sea near the shore. Fuel storage tanks are burning at the refinery. It is not possible to determine exactly what is burning in the sea from this video, noted OSINT analyst Astra. Fires in Tuapse. They are also being recorded by NASA firms, the Temperature Anomaly Tracking Service. However, the signatures on the map may be shifted and do not always reflect the exact location down to the meter.
A state of emergency has been declared in the region, and since the fire only intensified during the day, people in Tuapse will be watching this apocalyptic scene and breathing in petroleum fumes for more than just 1 day.
2 spots are burning. 2 spots.
Are burning, so it's better to postpone any vacation plans in Krasnodar Krai for now. It's not the best idea to try to improve your health in a region that houses the largest oil refinery in Russia. By the way, this refinery is important for exports. About 12 million tons of oil are processed here every year. 90% of the products, oil distillates, fuel oil, diesel fuel, and aviation kerosene, are sold abroad. The oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai became the second major target for Ukrainian drones in just 1 day. The day before, they even reached Bashkortostan. And that's, by the way, 1,500 kilometers away.
The SNKHZ plant. 3 drones hit it. Look at that smoke. That's it. Everyone go home, basically.
The Sterlitamak oil refinery has been attacked by drones before. This is a legitimate military target for the Ukrainian military because fuel for the occupiers' aircraft is produced here.
It produces a wide range of various chemical products, including, if I understand correctly, aviation fuel. And importantly, this is the specific feature of this enterprise. It produces various types of additives. And that's why it's shut down. Another shutdown for, I don't know, several weeks probably. Well, in general, this reduces the combat potential of the Russian army. There won't be enough lubricating oil in some direction or another. And then the tank brigade, they finally cease their fighting, patiently waiting until this oil is successfully delivered to them.
Russian enterprises, thanks to which the Russian army continues its aggression, have also self-destructed. At least that's what the local authorities claim. A man-made explosion occurred at the Kazan gunpowder plant, where an entire production facility was destroyed. An explosion was also heard at the gunpowder plant in Samara.
The activity in Russia is becoming more and more intense by the day. Officials are no longer hiding this in their public reports. For example, the governor of the Leningrad region, Drozdenko, stated, "His region is not just a border area, but a frontline one."
We are a region that borders foreign countries today, both by land and by sea. And today our region has the longest border with countries of the unfriendly NATO bloc. But recently, our region has become not only a border area, but also a frontline one. This is illustrated by just one figure, which I will announce now. I received it literally just a few days ago. According to the results of the first quarter of 2026, 243 unmanned aerial vehicles from a hostile country were shot down in the skies over the Leningrad region.
If St. Petersburg and its surroundings are considered a frontline region, then what can be said about the Belgorod region and even more so about the territories of Ukraine occupied by Russia, which the invaders have turned into military bases and depots? In just one day, the defense forces carried out a series of successful strikes, destroying the aggressors' logistics.
Drones from Ukraine's National Guard Azov unit launched a real hunt for Russian logistics near Donetsk. According to the military, not long ago the occupiers felt completely safe there. But now all logistical routes are under the control of Ukrainian drones. A new model of warfare has been implemented in Ukraine: drone assault units. The Ministry of Defense emphasized that this approach has already proven effective in the south, where significant territories have been liberated since February. More about Minister Mikhailo Fedorov's innovations in the report.
Putin's occupiers are in the crosshairs. A new model of warfare is being introduced in Ukraine. We're talking about the creation of drone assault units. The new model combines aerial and ground drones with infantry into a single system, which makes it possible to minimize personnel losses and increase the accuracy of strikes.
Looking at the situation as it stands today, I clearly observe what appears to be a highly logical and entirely predictable evolution of these assault units into something that will fundamentally transform the very nature of future infantry operations worldwide, and not just within the borders of Ukraine, but at least until the end of this century, since the infantryman and the unmanned systems that accompany him, reconnaissance systems, surveillance, ground robotic complexes, as well as strike assets are an integral part of today's infantry, and this integration will take place specifically within assault units.
It is planned that this experience will be scaled to all key sectors of the front, ultimately cementing the dominance of unmanned systems in the strategy of modern warfare. According to the Ministry of Defense, the deployment of the newest units has already demonstrated concrete successes in southern Ukraine. At
that moment, the suppression of Russian positions was carried out in a combined manner, using both drone components and assault units. You could say it was a kind of trial of our capabilities, and it delivered results. We not only stopped the Russian advance in the Guryapol direction along the right bank of the Gaichu River, but also in the area between the Volchya and Vorona rivers. This is already the Dnipropetrovsk region, but we forced the Russians to move to the left bank of the Gaichu River, to retreat, abandon their positions, and fall back.
According to Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, every meter of Ukrainian land costs the occupiers enormous human losses. The introduction of drone assault units, which combine unmanned systems with infantry, will make it possible to fight the Russian invaders much more effectively.
Mikhailo Fedorov is a person with an exceptionally deep and robust technical background, someone who is extensively well-informed and deeply knowledgeable about exactly what is happening in the military and the specific urgent requirements that the troops on the front lines need right now. Finally, fresh blood has entered the Ministry of Defense, not some outdated, elderly, retired, or temporary figure. In other words, not a stopgap appointee. Here we are talking about a concrete change from within the very concept of the Ministry of Defense and its approach to making decisions going forward, specifically regarding how Ukraine should achieve victory in this war.
Although Mikhailo Fedorov has only held the position of Minister of Defense since January, he is actively implementing a technological approach to waging war. On April 15th, at the Steinef format meeting, Fedorov noted that Ukraine's air defense has been significantly strengthened. The interception rate of cruise missiles reached 80% and the interception rate of drones exceeded 90%. And this is despite a very difficult winter when Russia tried to destroy Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
During the late night hours of April 15th leading into the 16th, we actually witnessed firsthand exactly how our sophisticated air defense systems managed to successfully handle almost the vast majority of incoming targets. The short-range air defense shot them down. The maximum possible number of enemy drones. Medium-range air defense, including our aviation, F-16 fighters, MiG-29s, shot down Kh-101 missiles, and 19 out of 20 missiles were intercepted. That is practically an absolute level of effectiveness. But we still have problems with ballistic missiles.
Contact, the working group on Ukraine's defense issues. During the Ramstein meeting, support for the country's air defense and the supply of missiles for the systems were agreed upon. Patriot. Germany is also investing $4 billion to strengthen air defense. The United Kingdom is providing the largest support package in the field of drones. This year, Estonia is joining the strengthening of air defense under the Pearl program.
This is first and foremost a reinforcement. It strengthens the capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces to conduct both counter-offensive operations and accordingly so-called active defense. But there was also a very notable statement from the head of NATO that the country will receive military support from our European partners in the amount of approximately 6.1 billion euros.
The protection of Ukrainian airspace has become not just a matter of security, but a powerful impetus for the development of the defense industry and communication with European partners.
Not just at the level, send us Patriot missile system launchers, send us PAC-3 type surface-to-air guided missiles for the Patriot air defense system, but also let's communicate at the level of creating our own air defense system. Affordable, inexpensive, yet high-tech and functional when it comes to intercepting ballistic missiles. According to
Bloomberg estimates that Ukraine has already become one of the largest testing grounds for combat drones in Europe. New solutions are tested directly on the battlefield, and successful developments are immediately put into large-scale production.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In the past 24 hours, Russia has lost at least 1,000 occupiers killed and wounded. Thus, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, this already amounts to 1,316,070 invaders. In addition, over the past 24 hours, Ukraine's defense forces have destroyed 4 Russian tanks, 9 armored combat vehicles, 114 artillery systems, numbers not seen in a long time, and dozens of other pieces of enemy military equipment. Now is the perfect time to subscribe to the channel. Like this video and share it. Please do it, right now. Thank you and glory to Ukraine. The Russians are preparing a new offensive in the southeast of Ukraine and are aiming to capture the Donetsk and Luhansk regions by September. This was reported by the Financial Times, citing sources in the main intelligence directorate, HUR. The publication notes that the Kremlin is deploying its strategic reserve and is additionally sending 20,000 new servicemen to reinforce its forces already in Ukraine. That is what the occupiers are planning, but here is what they are doing right now. The Russians have launched massive shelling across Ukraine, attacking the Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa, Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kyiv regions. There are wounded and significant destruction. Meanwhile, the United States may delay arms deliveries to its European allies amid the war in the Middle East. This was reported by Reuters. According to the publication, American officials have already warned some European countries that the timeline for delivering military aid may shift The reason is the need to redirect resources to other priorities related to regional security. However, no final decisions have been made yet. And here there are several important points to consider. From certain progress in negotiations between the US and Iran to a 10-day truce between Israel and Lebanon. This by itself guarantees nothing, but it gives hope for an end to the active phase of the conflict. Perhaps less weaponry will be needed for this region. And its deliveries to Europe will take place on time and in full. We are monitoring the situation as it develops. And it is appropriate to mention here that Iran has announced the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Passage is permitted for all commercial vessels along the agreed route. After this, the price of Brent crude oil fell below $90 per barrel. Trump thanked Tehran for opening the Strait of Hormuz on the social network Through Social. The Netherlands will already transfer an Alkmaar-class mine countermeasures ship to Ukraine in June. It was named Donetsk in honor of the Ukrainian vessel that was lost while carrying out a combat mission in June of 2022 near the Kinburn Spit. A provocation Kremlin style. During an aerial patrol over the Baltic Sea, a French Rafale fighter jet detected a Russian Su-30 flying at an extremely low altitude. Moscow has not yet commented on this incident in any way. Well, what do we expect to hear from them? The main thing is not what the Kremlin will say, but how the Baltic countries will prepare for a possible Russian attack. Threats from Russia are getting louder and louder. The Kremlin even has a special person for such statements. A sort of special threat maker, Dmitry Anatolyevich Medvedev. Of course, it's hard to take him seriously, but it's important to understand that he's allowed to say what Putin is thinking.
The Putin regime is once again switching to the language of direct threats.
This is a symptom of the impending strategic defeat of the Russian regime.
And they're doing this so openly for the first time. The perpetually drinking deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, Medvedev, threatened European countries with strikes on their territory.
When could such a strike happen? Whether it becomes a reality will depend on how the situation develops. Sweet dreams, European partners.
These statements were made against the backdrop of the Russian Ministry of Defense publishing a list of enterprises in European countries that Moscow calls participants in the production of drones and military equipment for Ukraine.
A significant increase in the production of UAVs for the Kyiv regime is planned through expanded funding of Ukrainian and joint enterprises located in European countries. This concerns the production of strike drones and their components.
The list includes 11 branches. Among them are facilities in the United Kingdom, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Poland, and the Czech Republic, as well as Germany, Spain, Italy, Israel, and Turkey.
We regard this decision as a deliberate step leading to a sharp escalation of the military-political situation across the entire European continent, and the gradual transformation of these countries into Ukraine's strategic rear.
In essence, this is no longer just a warning. This is a public labeling of targets that Moscow effectively associates with potential strikes.
Russia is rapidly running out of air defense systems. Last month alone, based only on video confirmations, the Russian regime lost 41 units. Radar stations, surface-to-air missile systems, and so on. This month, it is losing about 1 unit per day. In the previous 3 months in a row, 54 units were lost. The air defense crisis is only just beginning.
And against this backdrop, Medvedev's rhetoric looks less and less like a show of strength and more like fear. The fear of a system that tries to cover up its own vulnerability with threats and harsh statements.
At the same time, the Ukrainians are getting more and more drones and missiles, but especially unmanned aerial vehicles. Moreover, the quality of these drones has clearly improved, and their range has not decreased. In fact, it has increased again. A year ago, their accuracy had already reached meter-by-meter precision. And since then, as you can imagine, these systems have not become less effective. On the contrary, they have become even better.
That is why each new round of such statements sounds not like an expansion of influence, but as a signal of an impending internal fiasco that the Kremlin is trying to hide by any means possible.
This statement from the Russian Ministry of Defense should be understood. In the most literal sense, the publication of the locations where drones and other military equipment are produced in Europe is essentially a registry of potential legitimate targets for the Russian armed forces.
And yet another step toward exerting pressure. The Russian State Duma has also approved the so-called protection of Russians abroad. In the first reading, a bill was passed that allows the Russian leadership to use armed forces outside the Russian Federation by decision of the authorities. supposedly to protect citizens who are being prosecuted. Formally, this concerns Russians who have been arrested or prosecuted by decisions of foreign courts and international bodies in which Russia does not participate. However, the key feature of this initiative is its extremely broad wording, with no clear limitations on the use of force. Essentially, this creates a mechanism by which decisions of foreign courts can be interpreted as grounds for a foreign policy and potentially military response.
Russia is showing that it is losing ground in this war, generally speaking, on all fronts. On the front lines, where the Russian offensive, as reported for example by the publication Volt, has stalled. In the rear, if we talk about the mid-level rear areas, which are burning like never before, and of course in the deep Russian hinterland where literally, as I already mentioned, entire clusters are being burned down, sometimes in a single night. Entire clusters of the Russian military-industrial complex.
And the more frequent and louder the threatening statements in Russia become, the more obvious the main point is. The end is near, which means that Ukraine and its Western partners are on the right track.
The occupation authorities have sentenced a Polish citizen who fought on the side of Ukraine to 13 years in prison. This was reported by The Independent. According to the Russian Prosecutor General's office, Krzysztof Flachik was captured by Russian forces in November 2024 in the temporarily occupied territory of Melitopol. Later, the so-called Supreme Court of the so-called LNR sent the foreigner to a high-security penal colony. But the Russian authorities don't need arguments or evidence to imprison someone. Putin signed a decree that allows Russians and foreigners to be detained without trial for opposing the so-called special military operation. All the details are in the report.
Extremists, terrorists, foreign agents, and those spreading false information about the Russian armed forces. People who disagreed with the war against Ukraine have been prosecuted under all sorts of charges. But apparently even that isn't enough for Putin, so he decided to speed up the punishment of dissenters.
Don't exaggerate. What witch hunt? What? I don't know.
So, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine on March 8, 2022, with a single stroke of Putin's pen, a secret order comes into force in Russia. Whether it was a decree or simply a decision, everyone who speaks out against the so-called special military operation is to be sent to pre-trial detention, without trial or investigation. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Russian citizens or foreigners. And
this, I would say, is an absolutely profound and shocking revelation. It truly opens our eyes, pardon the tautology, to the complex and troubling ways in which such a vast number of individuals ultimately ended up behind bars. If we take a moment to consider the question, how did the Russian authorities deal with this? Well, they did so simply by the systematic and illegal practice of throwing these innocent people into prison cells.
Human rights activists from the First Department accidentally learned about this secret order from documents of the investigative committee.
According to this document, the FSB placed a Russian citizen in a detention facility, citing a decision by the President of the Russian Federation dated March 8, 2022, on the organization of the reception and placement of persons opposing the special military operation. No criminal case was even initiated against him. According to the President's decision, such individuals can be transferred to and held in facilities operating as pre-trial detention centers. And representatives of the Russian Armed Forces, FSB, Ministry of Internal Affairs, and Federal Protective Service have the authority to send them there.
But this is not just a presidential decision, it's a direct violation of the Constitution. Article 22 states that a person can be deprived of liberty only on the basis of a court decision.
It has been frequently stated that the entirety of the power rests within my hands. And indeed, there is significant power that is held directly by the President of the Russian Federation.
Although there's nothing to be surprised about, there hasn't been any real justice in Russia for a long time. The concept of law has been distorted, and the courts have turned into instruments of the Kremlin's machine.
Putin is a legalist, and he tries to make it look like everything is done according to the law. That's why it will be especially interesting to find out exactly which document they managed to issue in order to, in fact, mock criminal law and criminal procedure. Putin spits not only on international law, he even spits on Russian law and the Russian constitution. And
even without such secret decrees, the repressive system is running at full capacity. The wording of the articles under which Russians are prosecuted is so vague that anything can be made to fit them. A solo protest, a like, a repost, or even a private conversation. All of this can become grounds for a criminal case. And
what about us? And when we consider the overall scale
of these repressions is only growing. As of February 2025, more than 20,000 people have been detained in Russia for their anti-war stance. According to the Human Rights Project OVD Info, out of these 20,000 detainees, almost 11,000 cases resulted in criminal proceedings being opened. And with this decree, the Kremlin simply decided to make things easier for itself and remove even the appearance of legality. Russian media have learned that, based on that very secret document, at least 2 Russians and dozens of Ukrainians were sent to pre-trial detention centers without any court proceedings. And it is precisely for the purpose of repressing Ukrainians that, according to experts, Putin issued such a secret document.
From the general considerations, it appears that this was done because there is a date, March 8, 2022. Apparently, Putin was thinking about what to do with Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians who, as we know, are being held in Russian correctional facilities in large numbers. How should they be sent there? Because perhaps, and again this is purely speculation, even Russian judges might have been surprised, but in reality nothing happened. We are supposed to arrest someone. Therefore, apparently, to simplify the matter, it was decided, why don't we just put everyone in pre-trial detention centers without any court or investigation at all? Well, and that slightly pulls back the heavy curtain of secrecy over how so many Ukrainian citizens have found themselves held in Russian detention facilities. According to recent reports,
to various sources, there may be about 7,000 Ukrainian civilians held in Russian prisons, but the numbers could be significantly higher.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Strength to the Ukrainian defenders, both men and women. Glory to Ukraine. Subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share this video. See you next time.